fading skies. Tattered flags waving dreams in our eyes. The crowds roar like a storm on the wind. We're the underdogs fighting again.
What's going on, guys, and welcome to another edition of Stateside Footy. I'm your host, Steve Silver, and it is Thursday night, and I actually kind of enjoy the Thursday night show, and especially with this one, because I've been shooting on this one for about a month, going over past World Cups, going over host nations and group stages to, finally come to the conclusion, or should I say, ask the question of whether or not the United States men's national team can shock the world at the 2026 World Cup here in the United States and Canada and Mexico. And I'm going to try to answer that. Before we do, please make sure you hit the like and subscribe buttons and also hit the notification bell as well. And I was thinking about doing a TikTok live on this one too, and I decided not to because, quite honestly, I just didn't want to. There'll be others. There'll be other opportunities, but please do, because we have rounded 400 and we are looking to get to 500 before the start of the World Cup. And I actually think I can do that. I think it's definitely doable. All right. So to actually, before we do that, let's go ahead and check on the chat, because we got Derpy the 501st, who says it's 100% possible and go USA. Yes. It is quite possible. All right. So first and foremost, to answer the question, if the United States men's team can shock the world, I think it's the first part of this is going to be answered in two different stipulations, right? Number one, it's always going to be what I consider not just the group stage, but also the home. I guess you can say the leniency towards the host nation. That's what I was trying to say. And if you go back through past World Cups, not only does the host nation get a relatively easier draw, unlike the United States that always seems to be in the group of death, but that being said, there is also a pathway past the round of 16. And I would probably say that the United States, of all three host nations in World Cup 2026, I would say that the U.S. probably has the easiest pathway to the round of 16. When you think about Mexico, their group has a little bit more of a degree of difficulty. Same thing with Canada. But for the United States, even if Turkey ends up in our group, I would think that, number one, just with the addition of Paraguay and Australia, two teams, by the way, and people forget, in 2022, Australia actually got out of their group. The Socceroos actually ended up taking Spain to the wire in the round of 16. And so that's one of the reasons why I don't necessarily want to overlook certain teams. But that being said, there is a tendency for host nations to overachieve a little bit. And if you guys remember back to World Cup 94, in many ways, there's a case to be made that the U.S. men's national team at that World Cup as well a team on paper that didn't necessarily look all that great, definitely overachieved and got out of that group. But I digress. And let's go ahead and take a look at our group right here. And as I said, it's going to include Paraguay, Australia, and the UEFA playoff, the winner of playoff C, which is most likely going to be Turkey, although the games have yet to obviously play. But that is when you think about this for a second, for the United States to be in a group that has a team in Paraguay, a good South American team, but if you recall back to the November window when we had Uruguay and Paraguay, two teams that on paper, considering the form that we were in, and considering, I guess you can say, the angst of the fan base, two teams that were a nice little measuring stick for this team, especially a team like Uruguay that actually kind of roughed us up in Copa America 2024. Having that team in our group is, there's something intimate about it. I don't like to use that word, but it is. It's yes, they know us, but we also know them too. And if you remember back to that window when we played Paraguay and Uruguay, we were damn near at full strength. And to be able to get over that, and to be able to do it in a way where it kind of solidified things, it makes things going to be a little bit easier. And the same thing with Australia. Australia is not going to be a pushover, but that being said, minimum 6 points, if not 7, because you would probably assume there's going to be a draw in there somewhere. And so from that standpoint, the road to the round of 16 sets up nicely for the U.S. men's national team. In my mind, there's no doubt about that. But the other thing to consider here is what I like to call the second cycle phenomenon. And what do I mean by that? Most teams have their best World Cup runs in their second cycle. When you think back to Belgium in 2014, there was a second cycle. When you think about what's interesting about this, if you think about to Russia in 2018, yes, a host nation, but those boys were in the second cycle. When you think of World Cup 2022 for England, that was their second cycle. Some of these guys are actually going on their third. For the United States, large and for with the exception of a guy like Christian Pulisic, who, by the way, is going into what would be his third if we qualified for 2018. Most of these guys are coming into their second cycle. They have been to their first World Cup. They understand exactly what it's like to get through a group. They understand exactly what the pressure is like in a round of 16. And so from that standpoint, there's not going to be what I would like to consider the pressure, the World Cup pressure of having it to do it the first time around. They know that. They know what a World Cup feels like. They know what the banana skins are. They know what the pitfalls are. The second time around is going to be a little less pressure. But obviously it's on home soil. And so from those two aspects, when it comes to being able to play, being able to be a host nation, with the fact that most of these guys are coming into their second cycle, it's going to set up in a way where the U.S. has a legit shot to at least get to the round of 16. And depending on how these ping pong balls fall, there's a good chance to be made that they can get to a quarterfinal. Now, once you get at a quarterfinal, then it's, at that point, it's going to be, as we saw in World Cup 2022, what we saw with the Moroccan team. And Morocco essentially just got there on piss and vinegar. Yes, that team, that team had talent, but that also, that team also fought. That team also played with a tremendous amount of spirit to get exactly where they got to, in the fact that that team also was dealing with injuries mid-tournament. And so it just goes to show you that it's not necessarily the team that's in front of you, because on their way to a semifinal, they actually beat some pretty quality teams. But what I will say is it feels like the combination of some of these players coming into their second cycle with the addition of a guy like Mauricio Pochettino, it feels like the recipe could potentially be there. But let's take a look. Because the winner of Group D, the US, Paraguay, Australia, and most likely Turkey, the winner. And it's imperative that the US actually win this group, because as it steps up, they would play the third place winners of Group B or Group E, Group F, Group I, or Group J. The third place winner. And so it's imperative that the U.S. actually tops this group. And again, when you start talking about, I guess you can say, the home treatment, the host nation treatment, I don't see a situation where the United States is going to not win this group. And it's also imperative because when you think about this, coming out of Group B, a third place team, you're probably looking at Qatar or Canada potentially. Me personally, Switzerland's probably going to finish in the top two of that group, and of course, we'll find out who the winner of Playout A is. But getting into the round of 32 and understanding that potentially in Group B, it's going to be your CONCACAF neighbors to the north or Qatar. Group E, me personally, that also could be potentially Curacao or the Ivory Coast, depending on how that thing shakes out. I don't know. I don't necessarily know what to think of Germany right now. It would be foolish of me to actually take Germany to win Group E, just considering what happened in World Cup 2022. But if the U.S. were to win Group D and the ping pong ball fell to the third place team in Group E, you're looking at potentially a CONCACAF rival. In Group F, you're probably looking at Tunisia or the playoff B. And again, you're starting to look at the odds are still going to look a little bit better. Group I, that's where the degree of difficulty gets a little bit difficult, because obviously now this group is actually kind of loaded. And this is something that, hopefully, we get to avoid a little bit. But that being said, it's like, if you're kind of asking how I think Group I is going to shake out, I wouldn't be surprised if that third place team coming out is probably going to be Senegal, potentially Norway. A little bit more of a degree of difficulty, or you get Group J, which is probably going to be Algeria or Jordan. Either way it goes. That is going to be your possibilities for the round of 32. Now, when it gets to the round of 16, the way it reads is that the winner of Group G, and of course Group G, which is Belgium, Egypt, Iran, and New Zealand, the winner of Group G will play the third place finisher of either Group A, Group E, Group H, or Group I or Group J. And if that plays its way out, then you're talking in the round of 16, it's going to be the US versus potentially Belgium, which is still very doable to get to the quarterfinal. And of course, you're looking at potentially it's a very good one. Group K, the winner, let's see. Let's nerf this one out real quick, okay? So if the US actually get past the winner of Group G, which would be the round of 16, so we're just saying this might be Belgium. The next go would be Group H versus runner-up in Group J. All right. Uruguay versus Argentina. That would be an interesting matchup. Me personally, the way that this thing is looking out, that the US is going to get to and get past the round of 16. So once you get to the quarterfinals, at that stage, depending on location, depending on time, by the way, it would probably end up being in Inglewood, California. So you're on West Coast times. There is a case to be made that if the US can get to a quarterfinal, there is a case to be made that at that point it is just going to be who is going to be able to fight for it more. Once you get to a quarterfinal, and again, we saw it in World Cup 2022, we saw it in World Cup 2018, there is going to be a team that has the potential to make a run. And when you look at the makeup of the US squad, and again, I got to say this, right? The second cycle factor plays a role into this one, because a lot of these guys now understand what it means and what it takes to play in a World Cup. They got a very good dose of it. And when you looked at that group play from 2022, and when you had Wales, England, and Iran, and to be able to navigate yourself through that group and get to a round of 16. Now, granted, it is what it is. I mean, they ended up playing Netherlands. That was a very good Netherlands team, and it is what it is. But now that they understand that, they understand the scope of what it takes to compete at that. And now it's 4 years later with roughly the same cast of characters, with a coach that has a hardline expectation just to even get on the pitch. That is a good recipe to have, because the expectation levels are extremely high. And that's the thing that I think that I always go back to, because again, I go back to every World Cup since 1990. And there's always a case, there's always a team that has that type of run. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that we're going to, get to a World Cup final, but would it surprise me if the US, because let's just take a step back. Nobody expects the US to do it, because outside of the United States, it's like the word American is a buzzword for not that great at soccer. I shit you not. You go to England, you go to France, you go to Germany, Spain, Italy, whatever the case may be, and they'll show a few players respect, but the reality is, if you say the word American, it is a buzzword for not great at soccer in the world of football. But that being said, when you look at where some of our best players are playing, and the fact that most of these guys have been playing together for at least 6+ years with the national team, there is chemistry, there is cohesion, they've had a World Cup together, and now they're going to be able to do it on home soil. I guess the question from that is, do these players understand the responsibility of what it takes to play in a World Cup? Excuse me, to be a host nation at a World Cup, because a lot's riding on their shoulders. A tremendous amount of pressure is riding on their shoulders. But that being said, they're a host nation and they actually have a pretty easy ride until you get to the round of 16. And if it plays out where you get a Belgium in the round of 16, this isn't Belgium 2014. 2010 to 2014. This is Belgium 2026. It's not that heavy. I mean, they're still a good team, no disrespect, but it's not like you're getting Kevin De Bruyne and Romelu Lukaku in their prime of their career. Still a very good team, but that being said, it's like when I look at the strengths of the U.S. team, and I look at the depth and the skill positions, i.e., guys like Brendan Aronson, guys like Ricardo Pepi, that can come on and score goals, there is a case to be made that this might be one of the deepest U.S. teams that we've had in a World Cup. And when you consider the depth, that a lot of these guys this isn't Major League Soccer depth. That it's funny to me because there's still some guys, some former players that'll still point to 2014 and say that was probably our best roster. And I'm like, I don't know. Because when I look at this roster and I'm going down our starters, and then I'm going, to some of our skilled positions, and our depth isn't necessarily Major League Soccer depth. That was the difference between now and 2014, where you look at that roster and underneath some of those starters, you have a lot of Major League Soccer players. It's no disrespect to that, but the formation in which we line up and the depth of those players behind some of those starters, it makes me think that it's going to be a little bit different. I think we're going to see a higher standard of play with this U.S. team come World Cup 2026. And the fact that we were given a group that minimum 6 points is easily doable, and in my estimation, it could easily be 7. And that's easily going to get you through as a group leader. And being a group leader coming out of Group D gives you third place teams that are not on your level. It doesn't matter which way you go, because the winner of Group D again gets the third place winners of Group B, Group E, Group F, Group I, and Group J. And no matter how you shake it, if you're trying to predict this thing out, all of those teams are going to be teams that the U.S. can routinely handle over a 90. So now you're looking at the round of 16, and now you're starting to look at potentially a winner of Group G. And of course, there's one name that stands out, and of course, that's Belgium. And that's really where this tournament begins. And the question really is, if we are able to do something incredibly special, does this team have the talent? Does this team have the depth to pull something off? Because again, man, I go back to Morocco 4 years ago, a team that, again, very talented, but also went through that tournament with multiple injuries at key areas, and were still able to get to a semifinal. Russia in 2018 had a very exciting tournament as a host nation with a team that I actually think that we're better at now than they were back in 2018. Belgium in 2014 was amazing. Again, second cycles. Second cycles matter. And this team is essentially prime. Most of these guys are in their primes, and like every single time that I actually try to talk myself out of it, I always end up coming back, and I just end up talking myself back into it. Like this is like I'm trying to think of a host nation recently that actually has this kind that has this type of talent in their prime with the depth that we have. And especially if we continue to roll out a 3-4-2-1. Now, there is an Achilles heel here, and of course, that's going to be at the center back position. And we'll get into that in just a second. But I'm thinking about this. And it's like, because I actually think that this team here is better than the Russian team of 2018. Brazil 2014, no. South Africa 2010, 100%. Germany 06, no. South Korea 2002, 100%. That South Korean team, yeah, no. That South Korea team was gifted some wins. And I'm trying to think. France 2008, 1998, no. US 94, 100%. Italy 90, no. Mexico 86, there you go. That's a pretty good comparison. Mexico 86. Now that I think about it. They may have been a little bit deeper, but I digress. So I guess the only Achilles heel that could potentially throw a wrench into this is that back line, is that back three. And I think this is going to be interesting. This March camp is going to be interesting to see exactly how Pochettino approaches it. Because Chris Richards is back. And apparently so is Tim Ream. And I think everybody's kind of hoping to see what Tim Ream is going to look like at the start of this upcoming Major League Soccer season and whether or not there's been a dip of form. Again, I think he's like, 38? Already is limited when it comes to his pace. And he's playing the outside left of a back three. And the pace is already an issue anyways because it requires Jedi to essentially cover a little bit more space as he's playing back. And so I guess that's the thing. It's like I need to see it. I need to see Tim Ream a little bit. But that being said, it's like we do have different combinations of center backs that could be actually better than what possibly could get put out there. Because the last time we saw it, it was Ream on the left, Richards through the middle, and it was a combination of Miles Robinson and Joe Scally on the right. That was the last time that we saw the U.S. men's national team. And Scally wasn't really all that great, but here's the added bonus to this is when Borussia Mönchengladbach fired their coach, the new guy that they brought in went to a back three, and Joe Scally ended up playing on the right side of a back three and has improved on a week-to-week basis to the point where he actually looks pretty goddamn good. And then, of course, there's Noah Kai Banks, who equally has looked very impressive with Augsburg. And then, of course, there's Mark McKenzie, who plays on the left side of the back three for Toulouse. And so there are combinations where all of a sudden it looks a little bit strong. It looks stronger than the last time that we saw it. And so for me, that is going to be the intrigue of the March camp. Let me do this real quick. Let me pull this up real quick. Yeah, so we get Belgium on March 28th, and then we get Portugal. Belgium and Portugal 3 days apart. And we're going to know. We're 100%. We're going to find out exactly what essentially that back three is going to be, it's going to be made of, because they're going to get tested 100%. And that's where the intrigue falls on a dude like Tim Reed. And whether or not that's going to be feasible in a World Cup, especially once we get to games where, I don't want to disrespect teams, but that being said, when the talent level absolutely dramatically rises. We get Tizer 3031 who says thoughts on Freeman joining Villarreal. That's a very good question, and I absolutely love it, by the way. And of essentially rookie players in Major League Soccer, when was the last time you saw a player essentially put himself in the stratosphere in his first season? Really, when you think about it, he comes into January camp in 2025, impresses Mauricio Pochettino, goes to his club, has a pretty phenomenal season for club, but yet continues to get brought into U.S. camp time after time, and he continues to get better. And by the time of the last camp, which was in November, you saw him actually, drop in playing multiple positions, and he was actually doing a fairly good job. I think his involvement over the 2025 calendar year was much more than a guy like Max Arsenin, who, by the way, is still being courted by European teams. But Freeman's development has been actually quite good, to the point where it wasn't surprising to see a team like Villarreal, who, by the way, I believe are in third place in La Liga right now in the Champions League. And now all of a sudden he's going to get dropped into that. It's a testament. It's a testament. The question is whether or not that level might be a little bit too much for him right now. I don't necessarily think it is. And one of the things that makes this even better is if he shows up and he excels from day one. If it isn't, and he actually becomes an integral part of their attack, and also their defensive back line. Because if he is, now all of a sudden you have yourself a very good question to ask yourself if you're Mauricio Pochettino. Because yes, you have Serginho Dest, who does a lot of good things for you in the attacking third. A lot of good things. And especially if you're playing with wingbacks, where they're required to hold the width and also play balls in, Serginho Dest does a lot of very good things for you. But then you also have Tim Uwe, who is also essentially playing as a wingback for Marseille. And he's actually doing pretty well. Although I think Marseille just got booted from the Champions League. But that being said, he's also excelling. And so what happens if a guy like Alex Freeman goes to Villarreal and puts on a show? Now all of a sudden you have yourself a problem. And now the question is how does Joe Scally fit into this equation as well too? Because if you want to carry three, it almost means that you're not going to be able to carry five center backs. It almost feels like you're going to carry 4. And then Alex Freeman is going to be able to fit potentially 2 roles there. If anything should happen. Or they carry 5 center backs and they carry Freeman, but they don't carry a backup left back. Or maybe they only bring 2 goalies. It's going to be interesting. But that being said, Freeman has definitely earned it. Has definitely earned the right to go to Villarreal. By the way, for those that are wondering, apparently talks have broke down between Fulham and PSV. Fulham offered 28. PSV's holding firm at 30. And so now there's a $2 million differential. And apparently Fulham isn't budging, which seems kind of odd. Like it would strike me if they were offering 25, right? If there was a $5 million gap, that seems a little substantial. But $2 million, you can't seem to split the difference and get a deal done. Or maybe you add $5 million in add-ons, maybe a 5% sell-on clause. I don't know, to get the deal done. How bad do you want them, right? But I understand it's Fulham. Apparently, West Ham was also involved as well too, and I think Ricardo Pepi told West Ham to go kick rocks, and that's a smart move as well too. The last thing you want to do is put yourself in that type of situation. For those that are wondering, West Ham is absolutely toxic at the moment. From their ownership all the way down to the players on the pitch, they're going to get relegated, and they're going to get relegated for a reason. Because their recruitment has been absolutely piss poor. And I'm trying to think of the last time a striker actually worked out for West Ham. That's a very good question. I probably have to look that up. Because I think the last 8 strikers, the last 12 strikers they've tried to bring in have all succeeded. They succeeded in failing. And the last thing you want to do, if you're Ricardo Pepi, is go to a team that can't provide service and join a sinking ship. Because the next thing the season's end, and then all of a sudden you're going to have to try to get promoted, and it's the last thing that Ricardo Pepi needs at this point is to get himself into a relegation scrap. So there's that. But what I will say is that the other thing that I also want to consider here, let's see, Tillman, yeah, he was. Yes, he did. He scored a brace. Yeah, Malik, by the way, Malik is so legit. By the way, he's your starting inside forward on the right, by the way. If the World Cup were to start today, my starting attacking 3 is going to be Balogun up top, and underneath will be Pulisic and Tillman. Without a doubt. And it's funny because when I think about forwards, I'm trying to figure out a way where a guy like Gio Reyna makes the roster. And I still haven't figured it out yet. If I'm going over the numbers correctly, I'm trying to figure out how you're going to be able to squeeze that in. There's no doubt he's one of our 26 best players. But boy, oh boy, man. Yeah, he hasn't had a good run of form lately. But I do want to talk about this a little bit more in depth because I was thinking about some of the heavies that are going to be in the World Cup. And I was thinking about it today too, because in UEFA, Italy might not even make the World Cup. There's a good chance that Italy doesn't qualify. So that's one less nation you have to worry about. Germany, by the way, Germany is a team that I don't necessarily trust. And when you look at that 2022 squad, There's roughly a lot of the same characters from the 2022 squad that'll be on this squad. I think with the addition of a guy like Florian Wirtz will be there, and a couple new guys. I think Adiemi is going to be on that squad as well too. But when you look at how good Germany was on paper in 2022, being coached by a dude like Hansi Flick, and they couldn't get out of the group stages, and when you see who they lost to in that group stage in 2022, one has to wonder whether or not Germany is going to be, the Germany of old. So you could put that off to the side as well too. And the way that I'm looking at this is Spain, France, England, the Netherlands, maybe Croatia, maybe Croatia. And then I start going through them. Like the only legit World Cup winning level squad is France. Spain is incredibly good, by the way. But are they on the same level of Spain 2008 through 2012, where they had virtually won every single piece of trophy there was to win? And they're not on that level. They're very good, and they're capable of getting to a semifinal. So you put those into those boxes over there. And then there's England. A team that is incredibly good, that has some of the best players in the world playing for them. But England bottles it. England is a bottle job. Haven't won a major trophy since 1966. And oh, by the way, when it pertains to the United States of America in a World Cup, we played them 3 times. And they haven't beat us. As a matter of fact, we pulled off the greatest upset in World Cup history in 1950. We beat England 1-0 in Brazil 1950. And the last 2 times that we met them at the World Cup were draws. But also England bottles it. No disrespect to those that are tuning in. I think England's a phenomenal team, but that being said, they always get so close to break your heart. And the last time we saw England in the World Cup, they go out in the quarterfinals. And that leaves the Netherlands, a team that's incredibly good, well coached. But if you ask me right now, if the U.S. were to play the Netherlands right now, full strength to full strength, is it going to play out the way that we saw it in 2022? I don't think so. I do not think so. I just think we're better coached. I think we're better coached now. And I just don't see it. I don't think there's going to be an African nation this year that's going to get to a semifinal. I think Morocco had a wonderful run. There's the Dermatron right there. What's going on, my man? Speaking of, we're going to be finding out if Ireland is going to make it into the draw. But I don't know, man. Like I don't see an African nation do what Morocco did in 2022. I think that was just a spirited run in 2022. That's exactly what I think it is. And I think they were just able, to ride it for as long as it did. But once they actually got into that semifinal and actually met a team that wasn't going to allow them essentially just to pin them back. Their run ended. Potentially a team like Senegal. That's a good team. But what I will say is, when I think about some of these nations and where they were and where they are now, especially in UEFA. I don't necessarily think that Germany, the Netherlands, and Italy are going to pose a legit threat. Same thing with Belgium. I just don't see it. And then South America is going to be the one. South America to me is going to be the one. Argentina doesn't have Angel Di Maria, may or may not have Messi. I would probably assume he's going to be there. But as of right now, it's still up in the air. And what is Argentina like without their heart and soul? That's seriously, that, Messi is like the beating heart of the Argentinian national team. And what happens if he's not there? Yeah, that's a very good question. Same thing with Brazil. Is this Brazil team better than the last time we saw them in a World Cup? Because I look at the Brazil squad and I'm just kind of like, yeah, long ago were the days of Ronaldinho and Ronaldo and those Brazilian World Cup teams of 94, 98, and 2002, unbelievable. Yeah, they aren't those. They aren't those. No more Neymar. They're I guess you can say that they're beating their heart and soul are probably going to be Marquinhos and maybe Bruno Guimaraes. But their striker is Richarlison. Their striker is Richarlison. So the way that I look at that, and again, that's why I kind of look at this and I ask the question is the U.S. primed and ready to shock the world at the 2026 World Cup? And it's really seriously go over it and just look at some of these teams. There are definitely going to be teams that you expect to be there at the end that'll probably be there at the end. But is it out of the realm of possibility that the United States could potentially do what Morocco did in 2022? 100%. 100%. Health is going to be key. Health is definitely going to be a key. But if we go into the tournament at 95% full strength, missing a guy, maybe a key backup, I think we might be able to weather that storm. Because again, you look at our group, you look at those opponents, and then you kind of look at how that draw plays out. And again, Group D, the winner of Group D gets the third place finisher from either Group B, Group E, Group F, Group I, and Group J. Let's pull it up. Group B. And it's a possibility that we're going to either get Qatar or Canada. Okay. Group E, potentially Ecuador or Curacao. Maybe the Ivory Coast or Curacao. I think we'll be all right. Group F, and you're probably looking at either Tunisia and then the play-in. Again, this would probably be the one that might be the stumbling block. Group I. Group J, again, you're probably either dealing with Algeria or Jordan. Again, not exactly the best teams that are coming out of the Asian Confederation. Group I could be the only stumbling block. But then again, do we have the wherewithal to beat Senegal or Norway? That could be the only stumbling block. But that being said, I don't think it's going to end up playing out that way, and we're probably going to end up getting, the ping pong ball is probably going to go our way, and we're going to end up with either, Qatar or Curacao in the round of 32. And if things work out and we end up getting the winner of Group G, and it's either Belgium or Egypt, I kind of like our chances. And that puts us in the quarterfinal. That puts us in a quarterfinal where if it's a big if here, because in the round of 16, in the round of 32, we would. So Group H, the winner of Group H gets the runner-up in Group J. So it'd be Spain versus whoever finished second, and then it's the runner-up of Group K and Group L. And so there is a possibility, there is a very distinct possibility that come July 10th in the quarterfinals, we get Spain. I don't know, man. Yeah, we get Spain if it plays out that way. And I would like to think that we could give Spain a run for their money. That's what I'd like to think. Who knows? But can the United States get to at least a quarterfinal? Yes. Can they from that stage pull off an upset? That's exactly right. Jedi versus Yamin. 100%. I am absolutely foaming at the mouth to see that type of matchup. And again, this is where Mauricio Pochettino is going to come in absolutely huge, because it's not just going to be here's our starting 11, and if it's continuing to win, you're going to roll with that. Because every game has its subtle nuances, and every match has its intricacies where you're going to have to find a match, a matchup that works. And if you're telling me my left-sided defenders are Tim Ream and Jedi, I would probably assume that Yamin Lamal is going to have a field day. So that left-sided center back is going to play. It's like, especially in a match versus Spain, is going to come in. It's going to be huge. And so from that standpoint, right, that's where a potential guy like Mark McKenzie comes into play. So, with that being said, now, before I go, I do have to say that I'm 100% biased. Obviously, I still remember World Cup '94 and the excitement that the United States had for that soccer team, and every World Cup thereafter, where it seems like a large portion of our country kind of unites behind this soccer team. And in 2026, regardless of what happens or what's happening now with all the brouhaha that's going on in the streets, in a couple months, for at least a solid month, all of that's going to disappear. This entire country is going to unite behind the soccer team. Let's see. There's a scenario where we play Canada, I believe. Yep. And I think Mexico, if we place first and Mexico places second in their group or vice versa, we can face each other. Well, I just put it out there, right? So now the group, the runner-up in Group B will play the runner-up in Group A. So if the United States finishes second and Mexico finishes second, hypothetically, yes, we would be able to face Mexico in the round of 32. And the winner of Group F would get the runner-up of Group C, which would be either Brazil or Morocco. And so that would look, if we got past Mexico, then we're facing one of those two teams in the round of 16, which is why it's important for us to win that group, because we want to go past the round of 16. Now, if we were to win Group D, there is a potential that we can get the runner-up or the third place team of Group B, which very well could be Canada. Or the third place team of Group E, which could also be another CONCACAF nation, which is Curacao. That would be absolutely massive for a round of 32. Because it essentially punches our ticket to the round of 16. And that's where we get our first big test, whether that be, Belgium or Egypt, which is an easier landing than, say, the Netherlands or Morocco. I would rather face the Netherlands or Morocco a little bit deeper after we've actually had a signature win, if that makes sense. So there you go. But that being said, man, the biggest reason, before I go, the biggest reason why I am very very excited for this is because of the two factors as I began this show tonight. Number one, we're the home nation, and because of it, we actually do have a pretty good case and a pretty good ride to get to the quarterfinals. Because we're really only going to have to face, I guess you can say, a big-ish type country before we actually have to face some of the world's best. But again, most of these guys are in their second cycle. Christian should be in his third. But obviously, we all know what happened back in 2017, 2018. But most of these guys got their first taste of what a World Cup is all about in 2022. They understand the lights, they understand the pressure, and they also understand, the subtleties of what it takes to actually win in the World Cup. And now they have that experience. And now they have Mauricio Pochettino. And that's absolutely massive. Absolutely massive, right? So the funny thing is, it's like when I think about the 2022 World Cup squad, I thought it was good. Certainly by no means did I think it was great. But it wasn't, me personally, I don't think it was well coached. I don't think that 2022 squad was really all that well coached. And when you look at the depth of that squad versus the depth of what's going to be this squad, we're not going to carry, 10, 11 Major League Soccer players. Like 4 at the most. I can see 4. 2 goalkeepers, both are in Major League Soccer. Diego Luna and probably Max Arston. or Christian Roldan. So maybe 5. The rest are going to be European-based. Let's see. And Reyna finally gets a shot at the world stage. Maybe. That's going to be a definite maybe. It's so your forwards as of right now are going to be Christian Pulisic, Malik Tillman, Weston McKennie, and Brendan Aronson. And then you can add Diego Luna to that, and that's 5. But then you also have to think about the center defensive mids, because Tyler Adams will be available for the World Cup. His was not a season-ending injury. He will be back probably a month before the World Cup. So there is a good chance that he's going to be fit and ready to go. And so it's going to be, they're probably going to carry 4 center defensive mids. So it's probably going to be Adams, Tessman, maybe Johnny Cardoso. We need to see it. And then maybe a guy like Christian Roldan, who comes onto the roster. If you ask me right now, I think Roldan probably makes it over a guy like Aiden Morks or a guy like James Sands. And then you got your wingback situation. Jedi, Dest, Weah, and then probably Freeman. 2 to 3 goalkeepers, and maybe 5 center backs, and then probably 3 strikers. And so you're going to have to figure out exactly, like, if you want to carry Reyna. 3, hold on. It's 10. That is 7. Yeah. They might. 26-man roster, they might. Like, if they want to carry 5 center backs and then carry 7 forwards, they could. Me personally, I think Gio is one of our 26 best players in the world right now for the U.S. When you consider his talent, and the last time he was with the national team, he absolutely came big. It earned him a spot on the March roster. In my opinion, the question is has he done enough since the last time we saw him, from then until today, and a month from now, 2 months from now? And oh, by the way, Yunus Musa right now is getting more time for Atalanta than Reyna is getting for Borussia Mönchengladbach. And I don't think there's going to be a scenario, unless there's injuries, that Yunus Musa gets called up into March. So, and by the way, this is not me taking a giant shit on Gio Reyna. I actually think Gio Reyna actually helps this team in a big way. I really do. But the way that Pochettino runs things, he may or may not be on that roster. I hope he is. But I do want to thank everybody for tuning in. And again, do me a favor and hit that like and subscribe button, and also hit the notification bell. Coming up this weekend, tomorrow, I do have a guest. His name is Billy T. He is the host of the Final Whistle podcast, but he also is he's also in the Leadership for Change for Tottenham, which is a protest group that is currently protesting the ownership for Tottenham Hotspur. So he will be on tomorrow, And I think that's going to be at 3 o'clock Eastern, 8 UK time. And then on Saturday, we have the Hotspur live stream. And then on Sunday, the Sunday Spurs conversation. So there's plenty of good stuff coming up this weekend on Stateside Footy. So please make sure you hit that like and subscribe button and hit the notification bell. Next week, of course, on Tuesday, we will have USMNT Yanks Abroad, which is our weekend, which is our weekly recap of U.S. men's national team players abroad. Plus, I do have a couple guests coming on as we get closer to the MLS regular season. We're going to have our season preview. And I'm working a couple guests to see if we can get on from that one. A couple guys that you guys know incredibly well. So I will make a post on YouTube letting you know exactly who is going to be the guest. So keep an eye on that. Keep an eye out for that as well too. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. You guys have been awesome. And yeah, I guess what I can say is that lo and behold, yes, I do think the United States is going to turn some heads in the summer. I think by default, I think they're going to, because this team, quite honestly, is probably going to be the best assembled U.S. team we've fielded in a World Cup. So, you guys take care. Good night.